Good morning and welcome to day 21 of Marjorie's Table. It's a Monday, which means we've got the crossover from the regular Monday morning writers who write with me via Substack and those of you who are doing the whole of April. So some of you will be more writer fatigued than others, but we'll get on with doing what we always do these mornings. We will do a quick warm up. We're going to look at the work of Nathalie Diaz this morning. We'll look at one poem together. I will give you two prompts to that poem. And then on the way out, we'll look at a second poem, which is actually a very, very long poem. So we're only going to read a part of it. And I'll give you a takeaway prompt to that. So, but before we even start thinking about poems, I'd like you to take a minute and write, just decide your favorite color or a color that you really like. It doesn't have to be your favorite, but settle on a color. Give it some characteristics. Mine's red, so it could be brick red or poppy red or whatever. Um, and then write a list of objects or flowers or whatever things that come in that color or that you see in that color. And then take a minute and add the texture of each of those objects, however that comes. It could be a scent as well, but just give it some description, a word or two. And those will be the words we'll share this morning if you want to pop a few of those into the chat box when you're done. Okay, and if you feel comfortable, share a few of those description words. Dappled, spiky, springing, flapping, proud, beautiful. Fuzzy, bitter, sharp, spike, unsullied, grisly, lovely, tender, tangy, pickled orange, beautiful, jaggy, fresh, light, smooth, metallic. Metallic is a beautiful word, not one I know. Twiggy, waxy, velvet, wonderful. Soulful, zesty, beautiful, wholesome, velvety, cupping blossom. Yeah, wonderful. Taffeta, linen, lovely, jute, cottony, beautiful, glistening, crinkled. There's stunning words this morning. Steal a couple that you like the sound of or more because there's so many. I didn't even get to add my own this morning, which is fine. Cut, smooth, crinkled, and try and work them into your writing if you like the sound of them. Just putting them on your own page often helps you towards that process, and that makes your writing do interesting things. So if you're writing about a sunset that is cotton, what does that mean? It often makes us go, ooh, that would be interesting. And the brain kind of goes down a little road. So try that if you fancy it, because I will forget to say it later. Thank you for sharing. I'll scoop some of those out for those watching the recording. We're going to look at this poem this morning by Nathalie from the Desire Field. This comes from a project that I'm sure I've mentioned before. I will send you the link to later, and when I send out the recording link. A project where Nathalie Diaz and Ada Limon, who is now but wasn't then the poet laureate of the US, wrote poems, letters to each other. And there's a really beautiful podcast of them talking about this process, which was just that they would send a poem and no notes. And then the recipient would then take something from it and respond in a way. So this is one of those poems. And in fact, Ada Limon in the podcast is talking about this poem. So I'll send you the link. From the Desire Field. Actually, let's see if we can get Nathalie Diaz to read it to us, which would be much better. No, I couldn't get, there we go. Let's see. I couldn't get it to come up last night, but let's give it a go. Always better to hear their voice than mine. I can't hear it. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can't hear it. So I'll send you the link, and later on, if you want to hear her reading it, you can try it on your own computer. From the Desire Field. I don't call it sleep anymore. I'll risk losing something new instead, like you lost your rose and moon, shook it loose. But sometimes when I get my horns in a thing, a wonder, a grief, or a line of her, it is a sticky and ruined fruit to unfasten from, despite my trembling. Let me call my anxiety desire, then. Let me call it a garden. Maybe this is what Lorca meant when he said, Verde que te quiero verde. Because when the shade of night comes, I am a field of any worry ready to flower in my chest. My mind in the dark is una bestia, unfocused, hot, and if not yoked to exhaustion beneath the hip and plow of my lover, then I am another night wandering the desire of field, bewildered in its low green glow, belling the meadow between midnight and morning. Insomnia is like spring that way, surprising and many-petaled, the kick and leap of gold grasshoppers at my brow. I am struck in the witched hours of want. I want her green life, her inside me in a green hour I can't stop. Green vein in her throat, green wing in my mouth, green thorn in my eye. I want her like a river goes, unbending, green moving, green moving, fast as that. This is how it happens. Soy una sonambula. And even though you said today you felt better, and it is so late in this poem, is it okay to be clear, to say, I don't feel good, to ask you to tell me a story about the sweet grass you planted, and tell it again or again until I can smell its sweet smoke, leave this thrash field and be smooth? There's quite a big note about this poem along the side here. So I won't read it out, but it does give you a lot more context in terms of that space and that idea of calling anxiety desire. So I'm going to read it again, and I'm just going to ask you to think on what you think about the poem generally, but also, because I'm always banging on about form in these sessions, see how the change in form impacts us. There's some single lines, there are some double lines, there are some lines that are indented a bit. And so that means the return, as it were, for the brain, that's an old typewriter word, I don't know how better to call it, is somewhat a bit more gapped. So look at the impact that has on you, because it isn't regular. And for me, that mimics what's kind of happening in the poem, that insomnia, that uncertainty. And I'll get to actually, let's look at your comments before I read it again. Gold grasshopper at my brow, just saying that it's beautiful. She's a wonderful writer, definitely worth finding if you don't know her work. Okay, let me read it again. Nathalie Diaz. I don't call it sleep anymore. I'll risk losing something new instead. Like you lost your rose and moon, shook it loose. But sometimes when I get my horns in a thing, a wonder, a grief, or a line of her, it is a sticky and ruined fruit to unfasten from, despite my trembling. Let me call my anxiety desire, then. Let me call it a garden. Maybe this is what Lorca meant when he said verde que tierra verde, because when the shade of night comes, I am a field of it, of any worry ready to flower in my chest. My mind in the dark is una bestia, unfocused, hot, and if not yoked to exhaustion beneath the hip and plow of my lover, then I am another night wandering the desire field, bewildered in its low green glow, belling the meadow between midnight and morning. Insomnia is like spring that way, surprising and many-petaled, the kick and leap of gold grasshoppers at my brow. I'm struck in the witched hours of want. I want her green life, her inside me in a green hour I can't stop, green vein in her throat, green wing in my mouth, green thorn in my eye. I want her like a river goes, bending, green, moving, fast as that. This is how it happens. Soy una sonambula, and even though you said today you felt better, and it is so late in this poem, is it okay to be clear, to say, I don't feel good, to ask you to tell me a story about the sweet grass you planted, and tell it again or again until I can smell its sweet smoke. Leave this thrash field and be smooth. Yeah, I agree about the lines in Spanish making it sparkle. Even if you don't know what they mean, it feels like it. I think often that does that thing of leaving us in a dream state of slightly understanding or slightly knowing the sentiment of it, even if you don't have the Spanish. Um, yeah, and I love the stop-start nature of sleep. And you're right. I think the repetition does that stop-start. Green of really helps. Green moving, green, comma moving. It isn't regular. It doesn't have the regularity of music, for example, which is often what we look for or aim for in poems. Um, yeah, I like that Coyet as well, that idea that Spanish allows us to be between. Um, and the uncertainty, Kim says, is compounded by the lines indented, which I agree. It gives that kind of, it doesn't wreck the rhythm. It pronounces the fact that there isn't really a rhythm in the same way that we feel when we're in sleep, which is lovely. Okay. Any other comments? Pop them in the chat box and I'll read them before we read the second poem, which is a lot shorter, or the part we'll read is a lot shorter. Um, the first prompt, well, first of all, there's so much in this poem. If you want to write about that idea of anxiety and desire, do steal Nathalie's words, but credit them if you're going to publish those words by usually just by putting them up at the top, saying after Nathalie Diaz. But the prompt from me is to go back to that initial warm up and imagine handing someone one of your objects. Because here the poem is so much about green. Think about your color and how do you give someone a sunset or a ring, or who would you give one of those objects to? Imagine the passing over of one of those objects. But there's so much in this poem. Feel free to go off piste. I'll bring us back together probably at 52 or 53 minutes past and give you an alternative prompt. Okay, if you'd like to swap prompts, again, you're welcome to lift any of the ideas in the poem, but try writing with this, a kind of mashup of this line here. Even though it's so late, is it okay to? Is it okay to, or is it okay to be clear? And see what happens. That could be about almost anything at all. Just another minute or two on that one. Okay, a couple of quick comments from others before um, we move on. Orla has suggested that the longing in the poem is about longing for spring, which I think really is beautiful. Mary, too, was trapped in the body of the poem and couldn't get into the form, which I think is exactly the point in a way. And Gillian said that the poem felt a bit like chaos, but you can't stop reading it because you can't guess what's happening next. I think there's a real confidence in the language, which allows us that in a way. Um, so that's something for us to learn about when we're editing our own work, to be really confident in those choices because it carries the reader in a way. We're going to go out looking at a poem, a short part, I should say, of a poem, because it's a very long poem called The First Water is the Body. And I'll just read the first section of it and then give you a little prompt to take away. And apologies for my translations. The Colorado River is the most endangered river in the United States. Also, it is part of my body. I carry a river. It is who I am. Aha Makav. This is not metaphor. When a Mojave says, Incha Akap Mahav Intum, we are saying our name. We are telling a story of our existence. The river runs through the middle of my body. So far, I have said the word river in every stanza. I don't want to waste water. I must preserve the river in my body. In future stanzas, I will try to be more conservative. The Spanish called us Mojave, Colorado, the name they gave our river because it was silt red thick. Natives have been called red forever. I have never met a red native, not even on my reservation, not even at the National Museum of the American Indian, not even at the largest powwow in Parker, Arizona. I live in the desert along the dammed Blue River. The only red people I've seen are white tourists sunburned after staying out in the water too long. Aha Makav is the true name of our people, given to us by our Creator who loosed the river from the earth and built it into our living bodies. Translated into English, Aha Makav means the river runs through the middle of our body, the same way it runs through the middle of our land. This is a poor translation, like all translations. In American imaginations, the logic of this image will lend itself to surrealism or magic realism. Americans prefer a magical red Indian or a shaman or a fake Indian in a red dress over a real native, even a real native carrying the dangerous and heavy blues of a river in her body. What threatens white people is often dismissed as myth. I have never been true in America. America is my myth. I'll stop there, but the prompt is to write about the river in your own body, however that comes. This is a real beauty. So I will send the links to these, but also the link to the podcast and the letter poems that go back and forth that the New Yorker published out with the recording as fast as I can get it uploaded from here in Shropshire this morning. Thanks for writing with me this morning. See many of you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.